We're now going to use right angle triangles and apply applications. So the first thing I want to talk about is if we are just given one length and an angle. So it says we have triangle ABC, find lengths A and B and angle B. Now, one thing I want to point out is that uppercase letters are the angle measurements and lowercase are the length measurements, and that is always the case. So if I look at the angle that I'm given and identify the opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse, so this would be my opposite, this would be my adjacent, and this would be the hypotenuse. Oops, HY. If I set up and say I want to find, let's say, my A value, well, what I may want to start with is identifying what angle B is. So angle B is equivalent to 180 minus the angle that is already given. 7 minus 90. So I end up getting 28.3 degrees. 28.3. Now I'm going to solve for side A. And I'm going to use my given angle of 61.7. So what I need to understand is that if I am going to use opposite to find my A and hypotenuse, well, opposite over hypotenuse is sine of some angle. That's the ratio. So I'm going to say that sine of 61.7 is equal to A, which is what I'm trying to solve for, over 106.2. I will cross multiply to get A by itself, and then I will put this into my calculator. So in my calculator, I'm literally going to put 106.2, hit the sign button, and 61.7. So that gives me an A value of approximately 93.5. Now if I want to find B, well, B over 106.2 is the same as A over H, which is cosine of 61.7. So I rearrange that, 106.2 cosine 61.7, and I get approximately 50.3. Now I have all three sides and I have all three angles. Just to let you know, I could also have used the Pythagorean theorem to solve for B, knowing that I already had two sides. In the next example, we have to do two different steps. We're first told that we have a roof and there's some angle. That angle is given information about the rise and the run. Well, really, that's just our opposite over our adjacent. So we can find what that angle is. So if we think of SOHCAHTOA, if I'm going to use opposite and adjacent, that means I have to use tan. So I'm going to find tan, and my opposite is 10, my adjacent is 12. Now how we get theta by itself, and theta is the angle, is I have to take the inverse tan of both sides. So whatever I do to one side, I do to the other side. On the left-hand side, these cancel because inverses of each other. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to go to my calculator and I'm going to hit second tan, and then I'm going to do 10 divided by 12, and that's going to give me the angle. So when I do that, I get 39.8 degrees approximately. Now the question is asking us to find the length of the rafter of the house. So if we have this picture, then we're told in the question that it's 21 along our adjacent side. We just found our angle to be 39.8 and we want to find x. So if I put that in a right angle triangle, here's my angle, so my opposite side, my adjacent side, and my hypotenuse. So if I'm going to use adjacent and hypotenuse, that means I'm going to use cosine. So I use my cosine of the angle, my adjacent over hypotenuse, and then I'm going to rearrange it. So I'm going to multiply both sides by x. So my x's cancel on the right-hand side. And then I'll divide both sides by cosine of 39.8. So I get x is equal to 21 over cosine of 39.8, which is equivalent to 27.3 feet. So some terms that you may have heard before: angle of elevation and angle of depression. The angle of elevation is always measured from a horizontal and it's going upwards, whereas the angle of depression is going to be from a horizontal and going down. So we have to be very aware when we're reading questions when it's saying the angle of elevation is, the angle of depression is, that we're measuring either up or down from a horizontal. Our next question is a word problem, and I'm going to give you the visual afterwards, but it says that we have a free gondola ride that provides a spectacular view of the town and the surrounding mountains. The gondola that begins in the town with an elevation of 8,725 feet travels 5,750 feet to station St. Sophia, whose altitude is 10,550. Then they continue 3,913 feet to Mountain Village, whose elevation is at 9,500 feet. So let's look at how confusing this is, okay? So here is our graph. So we start with this angle of elevation, and we have that 5,750 feet, and I would give you this picture in the question, okay? I wouldn't ask you guys to figure this out on your own. I guess we don't really need this B here because we haven't even done A. So we have this set up, and let's take it step by step. So the first one says, what is the angle of elevation from the town to Station Street Sophia? So here's our town, and we want to know what this angle of elevation is. So if I just take this piece of information and put it into a separate triangle. So here's my town. Here's St. Sophia. And I'm trying to find this angle of elevation. And I'm told that this is 5,750 feet. And I'm also told, if we go back, so in the question, we're told that the altitude is 10,550, and the town is already starting at 8,725. So that means that if this town is already starting at 8,725, and then all the way up to St. Sophia is 10,550, that means that this is going to be the difference. And that is 1,825. So now we have our opposite and our hypotenuse. So we can find, let's see, sine theta is equal to 1825 over 5750. So I'm going to take the inverse sine of that. And when I put that into my calculator, remember you hit second sine, we get 18.5 degrees. So this is 18.5 degrees. For the next question, we're first talking about now St. Sophia and the mountain village on the right-hand side. And we see that we have 3,913 between the two. We're also told that Mountain Village has an angle of elevation of 9,500, and we already knew that St. Sophia was at 10,550. So therefore, to find this side, we're going to subtract those two numbers. And that gives us 1,050 feet. And the other thing that we can notice is that if this is a horizontal and this is a horizontal, then our angle of depression from St. Sophia is equivalent to the angle of elevation from the mountain view. So we can solve for either one of these. So we'll use sine beta is equal to, this should be 1050. 1050 over 3913, which is 15.6 degrees. So 15.6 and 15.6. The next piece of information you need is about angles, but specific to bearings of north, south, east, and west. So the way you read this, if I have this example, north 55 degrees west. Well, north 55 degrees west means that I'm going north, so you have this center. You're going north, and then you're going to go to the left, which is west. The angle enclosed between the two is our 55 degrees. If we do south 67 degrees east, that means we start in the center, we're looking down, and if it's east, that means we're looking to the right. This would be north 60 degrees east, so we're starting up, and we look to the right, and enclosed is at 60 degrees, and this would be south 35 degrees west. The one thing is that we're always using an acute angle. So if I read this example, it says a forest ranger at point A sights a fire directly south. A second ranger at point B, okay, so here's A and here's B, which is 7.5 east, so that's the distance between A and B, sights the same fire. So here's the fire. How far from A is the fire? So we're trying to find this distance here. And we're told that the sighting from B is south 27 degrees and 23 minutes west. So south is looking down, and that means that if we rotate to the left, then that's 27 degrees 23 minutes. Now, to find out what this angle of depression here is, that because that's the inside of the triangle, we're just going to take 90 degrees and subtract 27 degrees 23 minutes, which gives us 62 degrees and 37 minutes. And if we convert that, our angle B, and that's from an earlier video, that ends up 62 degrees. So this angle is 62.62 degrees. So if we want to find this distance here, we're really finding the opposite, and we're given the adjacent. So opposite and adjacent is tan. So we'll use tan of 62.62 is opposite, which is D, over adjacent, which is 7.5. So 7.5 tan 62.62 when we cross multiply. So D is equal to 14.5 miles. Okay, you may need to go back and review how to change between degrees, minutes, and seconds to degrees.